Hello and welcome to this video where I'm going to analyse Act 1, Scene 3 of William Shakespeare's Macbeth. And in this scene we return to the witches. So the first scene is given over entirely to the witches. The second scene is given over to human beings. And in the third we have the two together, the witches and humans. The language which Shakespeare uses when the witches are speaking is always rude, vulgar and shocking. Animals are also referred to frequently, which can be seen as symbolising the witches' links to nature and lower level animals. The animals in scene 1, the cat and the toad, were considered witches' family or pets, and the animal imagery is used quite a lot throughout the play in a number of different contexts. So we see Macbeth from time to time slip into the way of speech associated with the witches, which could be interpreted as Shakespeare's way of showing us the impact the witches and assorted dark spirits are having on him. In this scene, we are being shown the power of the witches. But it's a little bit bizarre because it's not as great as we're led to believe in scene 1. For example, the audience finds out that one of the witches has been away killing swine, literally killing pigs, hopefully not Babe, Pig in the City, as seen in this video, which is, quite a sort of basic thing to be doing. The first witch has been offended by some woman who wouldn't give her chestnuts, and these events don't exactly inspire true fear in the audience. The witch who's been offended by the woman with the chestnuts has decided to take it out on the woman's husband, who's a sailor. So she has control over the winds and uses them to disrupt the ship's journey. But it's important to remember that though she hasn't it's important to remember that she's got power, but not the power to take his life. And there's this quotation, though his bark cannot be lost, yet it shall be tempest tossed. So it's sort of saying, I can't sink the ship, but I'll rock it about in a storm. Now, Shakespeare makes great use of foreshadowing again and hints at things that are to come. Structural devices in Macbeth and many of his other plays. There are good examples in this passage about the sailor. So at the outset, the witch says, "I'll drain him dry as hay," which can be read, very simply as a comment on Macbeth and his fate, as he is ultimately drained morally, physically and spiritually by the end of the play. Another important piece of foreshadowing is when the witch says that one of the ways she will torture this sailor is by preventing him from sleeping. Now, I don't know if you've ever really struggled with sleep, but we see in the quotation, "Sleep shall neither night nor day I hang upon his penthouse lid." In other words, he's not going to sleep. I'm going to stop him from being able to sleep. Now, sleep is a very natural and important part of life. We need to sleep in order to stay physically strong, but also mentally strong. And it's a process that Macbeth loses. So as he goes on to do lots of unnatural deeds, sleep is something that he just doesn't seem to get. And of course that plays upon the mental state he's in, which, is part of his downfall. The scene is also important for developing the characters of Macbeth and Banquo, especially the differences between them. So Shakespeare uses Banquo as a contrast to Macbeth, really just to show the audience that what Macbeth does and the tragedy that befalls him is as much his own fault as anyone else's. So Banquo's response to the witches is that he's simply not interested in what they have to say. He's a bit sceptical and wary of them. He tells them that he neither beg nor fear your favours nor your hate. So in other words, I'm not that interested and I'm not too bothered about what you have to say. But then he asks them for a prophecy. Well, Banquo is then surprised by Macbeth's reaction to the witches. The witches tell Macbeth he'll be the king, and Banquo asks Macbeth, "Why do you start and seem to fear things that do sound so fair?" So there's quite an interesting structural point here. Shakespeare intends for his audience to believe that this isn't the first time thoughts of becoming king have entered his head. We can read into this a sort of sense of Macbeth's guilt. He has clearly thought about this before. Otherwise, why would he react to such good news with fear rather than surprise? And also, the thoughts he has afterwards about murder are surely the thoughts of a person who has previously thought about the murder of Duncan. Whose horrid image doth unfix my hair and make my seated heart knock at my ribs. So he's, really sort of shocked by this idea. It's also interesting to note that Macbeth wants to know more from the witches and also wants to know from where they get their strange intelligence, whereas Banquo simply regards their prophecies as honest trifles. Unimportant things could, however, cause men to do terrible things because of temptation, and little does he know how right he will be. Macbeth's final words in this scene are also his first in the play, and it's telling that they are so in tune with the witches from the opening scene. Macbeth says, "So foul and fair a day I have not seen." Now, this links, Shakespeare here is linking Macbeth with the supernatural and evil element of the play from his very first appearance because of how similar this is to the words of the witches in Act 1, Scene 1.